The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Sarah Blackwood hunched over her desk, her eyes scanning row after row of numbers. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, reminding her of the late hour. But Sarah barely noticed. She was in her element, lost in the world of financial statements and balance sheets. Just another boring night at the office, she muttered to herself, a wry smile playing on her lips. Little did she know, her life was about to take a dramatic turn. Sarah was a forensic accountant, a financial detective of sorts. Her job was to dig through the monetary mess left behind by corporations, searching for discrepancies and uncovering fraud. It wasn't glamorous work, but it suited her analytical mind perfectly. Tonight's assignment seemed straightforward enough, a routine audit of a small nonprofit called Global Green Initiative. On paper, they were dedicated to environmental causes, planting trees, cleaning up rivers, that sort of thing. Nothing that should raise any red flags. But as Sarah delved deeper into the organization's finances, something didn't add up. She frowned, double-checking her calculations. There it was again, a discrepancy, small but noticeable to her trained eye. "What are you hiding?" she whispered, leaning closer to her computer screen. The next morning, Sarah strode purposefully into the offices of Global Green Initiative. The receptionist, a young woman with a forced smile, greeted her nervously. "Good morning, Miss Blackwood. Mr. Holt is expecting you." Sarah nodded curtly and made her way to the director's office. Marcus Holt, a man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair and a perpetual frown, stood to greet her. "Miss Blackwood, always a pleasure," he said, his tone suggesting it was anything but. "I trust you have everything you need for the audit?" "Almost, Mr. Holt," Sarah replied coolly. "There are just a few inconsistencies I'd like to discuss." Marcus's smile faltered for a split second. If Sarah hadn't been watching closely, she might have missed it, but she didn't miss much. It was what made her so good at her job. "Inconsistencies?" Marcus echoed, his voice carefully neutral. "I'm sure it's nothing we can't clear up. What seems to be the problem?" Sarah pulled out her tablet, fingers dancing across the screen as she pulled up the relevant documents. "I've noticed some unusual transfers from offshore accounts, large sums of money coming in, then being immediately redistributed to various shell companies. Care to explain?" Marcus's face paled slightly. "Oh, that," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Just some international donations. You know how it is with nonprofits, money comes in from all over." "Uh-huh," Sarah replied, unconvinced. "And these shell companies? They all seem to lead back to a corporation called Nexus Global. Ring any bells?" For a moment, just a moment, real fear flashed in Marcus's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of professional concern. "Miss Blackwood, I assure you, everything is above board here. Perhaps we should take a break? I could have someone bring us some coffee." "No need," Sarah cut him off. "I think I've seen enough for now. I'll be in touch." As she turned to leave, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much bigger than a simple audit. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she felt Marcus's eyes boring into her back. Outside, the busy streets of New York City bustled with the usual midday chaos. But to Sarah, everything seemed slightly off-kilter. She pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over the keypad. Who could she trust with this information? Before she could decide, her phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, for your own safety." Sarah's heart raced. She looked around wildly, suddenly feeling exposed on the crowded sidewalk. Who sent this? How did they know? She hurried to the subway, her mind whirling. This was no longer a simple case of financial mismanagement. There was something sinister at play, and Sarah had a sinking feeling she'd just scratched the surface. As the train rattled through the underground tunnels, Sarah's analytical mind kicked into overdrive. Global Green Initiative, Nexus Global, the shell companies. How were they all connected? And more importantly, what were they hiding that was worth threatening her over? She needed more information, and she knew just where to start. Later that evening, Sarah sat in her apartment, surrounded by stacks of papers and her laptop's glow. She'd called in some favors, pulled some strings, and now she was piecing together a puzzle that grew more complex by the minute. Nexus Global, it turned out, was a multinational corporation with tentacles in everything from pharmaceuticals to defense contracts. On the surface, they appeared legitimate, but as Sarah dug deeper, she uncovered a web of shell companies, offshore accounts, and suspicious transactions that made her blood run cold. "My God," she whispered, leaning back in her chair. "This goes way beyond a small nonprofit." A sharp knock at her door made her jump. Sarah froze, her heart pounding. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Ms. Blackwood?" a muffled voice called out. "FBI, we need to talk." Sarah's mind raced. The FBI? How did they know? Were they here to help, or... She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood outside, holding up a badge. He looked serious, but not threatening. Taking a deep breath, Sarah opened the door. "Can I help you?" The man lowered his voice. "Agent James Ryder. Miss Blackwood, I believe you've stumbled onto something very dangerous. May I come in? We have a lot to discuss." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. As she closed the door behind him, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would take her deep into the heart of a global conspiracy, testing her skills, her courage, and her very understanding of the world around her. Agent Ryder's revelation left Sarah reeling. "A global conspiracy," she exclaimed, her voice a mix of disbelief and growing alarm. "But how? Why?" Ryder's face was grim. "It's bigger than you can imagine, Miss Blackwood. Global Green Initiative is just the tip of the iceberg. We've been tracking Nexus Global for years, but they're always one step ahead." Sarah's mind raced, connecting the dots. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, it's all a front, isn't it? Ryder nodded. "Money laundering on a massive scale. But that's not even the worst of it. We believe they're manipulating global markets, influencing elections, maybe even orchestrating conflicts to drive up profits." "Jesus," Sarah whispered, feeling the weight of this knowledge settling on her shoulders. "What do we do?" "We don't do anything," Ryder said firmly. "This is way too dangerous for a civilian. You need to step back, let us handle it." But Sarah shook her head, determination flashing in her eyes. "No way. I'm already involved. I can help. My skills." A sudden crash interrupted her. The window exploded inward, showering them with glass. Ryder tackled Sarah to the ground as gunshots rang out. "Go!" he shouted, drawing his weapon. "Get out of here! I'll cover you!" Heart pounding, Sarah scrambled to her feet and ran. She grabbed her laptop and a go bag she kept for emergencies, then fled down the fire escape. Behind her, she could hear more gunshots and shouting. As she hit the street, a sleek black car screeched to a halt beside her. The passenger door flew open. "Get in if you want to live," a woman's accented voice commanded. With no time to think, Sarah dove into the car. It peeled away from the curb, tires squealing. Sarah turned to her savior, a striking woman with piercing green eyes and an air of dangerous competence. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded. "Elena Kovac," the woman replied, eyes fixed on the road as she navigated through traffic at breakneck speed. "And you, Sarah Blackwood, have just become the most wanted woman in the world." Over the next few days, Sarah's world turned upside down. She found herself on the run with Elena, staying one step ahead of both Nexus Global's assassins and government agencies that seemed compromised. Elena, it turned out, was far more than the investor she'd initially claimed to be. Her knowledge of the conspiracy and her combat skills hinted at a background in intelligence work. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Elena wasn't telling her everything. As they moved from safe house to safe house, Sarah put her forensic accounting skills to work. She dug deeper into Nexus Global's finances, uncovering a labyrinth of hidden transactions and shell companies that spanned the globe. "It's incredible," Sarah muttered one night, hunched over her laptop. "They've got their fingers in everything. Defense contracts, pharmaceutical companies, tech giants, even governments." Elena peered over her shoulder. "Can you trace it? Find out who's really pulling the strings." Sarah shook her head, frustrated. "It's like chasing shadows. Every time I think I'm close, the trail goes cold. We need more data, more access." A sly smile crossed Elena's face. "Then perhaps it's time we paid a visit to one of Nexus Global's offices." The infiltration of Nexus Global's regional headquarters was like something out of a spy thriller. With Elena's skills and Sarah's inside knowledge of corporate systems, they managed to bypass security and access the company's servers. As Sarah sifted through terabytes of data, her eyes widened. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Elena, look at this." The screen displayed a complex network of connections, politicians, business leaders, even religious figures, all linked to Nexus Global through a web of bribes, blackmail, and hidden ownership. It's not just about money, Sarah realized. They're building power, controlling everything from behind the scenes. Elena's face hardened. "We need to get this information out, expose them to the world." But as they prepared to leave, alarms blared. They'd been discovered. "Run!" Elena shouted, drawing a weapon Sarah didn't even know she had. They fled through the building, bullets whizzing past them. Sarah's heart pounded in her ears as they burst out onto the roof. They were trapped. Elena grabbed Sarah's hand. "Do you trust me?" she asked, eyes intense. Before Sarah could answer, Elena pulled her towards the edge of the roof. "Jump!" They leapt off the building. Sarah's scream caught in her throat. For a heart-stopping moment, they were in free fall. Then, with a jerk, a hidden paraglider deployed from Elena's backpack. As they glided away from danger, Sarah's mind whirled. Who was Elena really? How did she have all these skills? And most importantly, who could they trust with the explosive information they'd uncovered? Their landing was rough, but they made it to safety. As they caught their breath in a dingy alley, Sarah turned to Elena. "Okay, no more secrets. Who are you really? Who do you work for?" Elena hesitated, then sighed. "It's complicated, Sarah. I was Interpol. But when I started investigating Nexus Global, I realized the corruption went deeper than I ever imagined. I had to go off the grid." "So you're a rogue agent," Sarah said, pieces falling into place. Elena nodded. "And now we're probably the only two people alive who know the full extent of this conspiracy." As they plotted their next move, Sarah couldn't shake a nagging doubt. Something about the data they'd uncovered didn't add up. There was a piece missing, a connection she couldn't quite see. Their investigation led them across continents, always one step ahead of their pursuers. They uncovered more layers of the conspiracy: rigged elections, manufactured conflicts, controlled opposition movements. The scope of it all was staggering. But the deeper they dug, the more dangerous their situation became. Attempts on their lives became more frequent and more brazen. It was clear that whoever was behind Nexus Global was getting desperate. One night, as they pored over their evidence in a cheap motel room, Sarah had a breakthrough. "Elena, look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to her screen. "These transactions, they all lead back to one place." Elena leaned in, her eyes widening. "That's impossible," she whispered. The name on the screen was one they both recognized, a respected global charity known for its humanitarian work. But the numbers didn't lie. Somehow, this beacon of hope was at the center of the web of corruption. "We need to go there," Sarah said, determination in her voice. "It's the only way to unravel this completely." Elena nodded grimly. "It's risky, but you're right. We need answers." As they prepared for what could be their final mission, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how much her life had changed. From a desk-bound accountant to an international fugitive, uncovering a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of global society. She thought of Agent Ryder, hoping he had survived the attack on her apartment. She thought of Marcus Holt, wondering how deep his involvement went. And she thought of all the nameless, faceless people whose lives were affected by this vast, hidden machine of corruption. "Whatever happens," Sarah said to Elena as they geared up, "we have to expose the truth. The world deserves to know." Elena gave her a solemn nod. "Together, then, to the end." As they set out for their final confrontation, Sarah steeled herself. She knew the risks, knew that they might not survive this, but the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. Little did she know, the biggest shock and the most painful betrayal was yet to come. Sarah and Elena crouched in the shadows outside the sprawling compound of the World Hope Foundation. The irony of the name wasn't lost on Sarah. This beacon of supposed humanitarian aid was the linchpin of a global conspiracy. "Ready?" Elena whispered, her eyes glinting with determination in the moonlight. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. "As I'll ever be." They moved silently, Elena's training evident in every step. Sarah followed, marveling at how much she'd changed in the weeks since this all began. The naive accountant was gone, replaced by, what, a crusader for truth? A fugitive? Both? Their infiltration went smoothly, too smoothly. As they accessed the main computer hub, Sarah couldn't shake a feeling of unease. "It's too easy," she murmured. Elena shrugged. "Maybe we're just that good." But as Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, unlocking layers of encrypted data, her blood ran cold. "Oh no," she breathed. "No, no, no." "What is it?" Elena demanded, peering over her shoulder. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "It's a trap. We've been set up." Suddenly, the lights blazed on. They were surrounded by armed guards, led by a familiar face, Agent James Ryder. "Well done, ladies," Ryder said, his tone mocking. "You've led us right to the final piece of the puzzle." Sarah's mind reeled. But you were supposed to be FBI. You helped us." Ryder smirked. "Oh, I am FBI. But you'd be surprised how deep this goes, Miss Blackwood. Now step away from the computer." Elena moved like lightning, drawing her weapon, but she was outnumbered. In seconds, they were disarmed and restrained. "I must say, I'm impressed," a new voice said. Sarah's jaw dropped as Marcus Holt stepped into view, looking nothing like the nervous non-profit director she'd first met. "You've caused us quite a bit of trouble." "Why?" Sarah demanded, struggling against her captors. "All of this for what? Money? Power?" Marcus chuckled. "Oh, Miss Blackwood, you still don't see the big picture, do you? This isn't about money or power. It's about control, shaping the world as it should be." "You're insane," Sarah spat. "No, I'm a visionary," Marcus replied calmly. "And soon, you'll understand. You'll see the necessity of what we're doing." As they were led away, Sarah's mind raced. How could they escape? How could they expose the truth now? But the biggest shock was yet to come. They were brought to an opulent office. Behind the desk sat a distinguished older man, his face hauntingly familiar to Sarah. "No," she whispered, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under her. "It can't be." The man smiled sadly. "Hello, Sarah. I had hoped to spare you from this, but you've proven too persistent." It was Robert Blackwood, Sarah's mentor, the man who had trained her in forensic accounting, the man she had idolized for years. "Uncle Rob?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You're behind all this?" Robert sighed. "Not behind it, Sarah. Merely a part of it. A necessary part for a better world." "A better world?" Sarah's shock turned to rage. "You've manipulated elections, started wars. How many people have died because of you?" "Sacrifices for the greater good," Robert replied calmly. "The world is chaos, Sarah. We bring order." As Robert launched into an explanation of their grand vision, Sarah's mind whirled. She caught Elena's eye, saw the subtle nod. They had one chance. In a blur of motion, Elena broke free, taking down 2 guards. Sarah, running on pure adrenaline, slammed her head back into her captor's face. Alarms blared as chaos erupted. "Stop them!" Robert roared. Sarah and Elena fought their way out, using every trick they'd learned. They were outgunned, outnumbered, but desperation lent them strength. As they ran through winding corridors, bullets whizzing past, Sarah had a moment of clarity. She knew what she had to do. "Elena!" she shouted over the din. "The server room. We have to get there." Understanding flashed in Elena's eyes. They changed course, battling their way towards the heart of the compound. They burst into the server room, barricading the door behind them. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, initiating a data transfer she'd prepared for just such an eventuality. "What are you doing?" Elena asked, keeping her weapon trained on the door. "Sending everything," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Every transaction, every secret, every dirty deal, to journalists, to WikiLeaks, to everyone. They can't stop it all." Outside, they could hear the pounding of feet, the shouting of orders. They were out of time. "It's done," Sarah said, hitting the final key. She turned to Elena, a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. "Whatever happens now, the truth is out there. They can't bury it anymore." Elena nodded solemnly. "It's been an honor, Sarah Blackwood." The door burst open. Armed men poured in. Sarah and Elena raised their hands, exhausted but defiant. As they were led away, Sarah caught a glimpse of her uncle's face. The mask of calm confidence was gone, replaced by fury and fear. He knew it was over. In the days that followed, the world was rocked by the revelations. Governments fell. Corporations crumbled. The entire global power structure was turned on its head. And at the center of it all was the story of Sarah Blackwood, the accountant who had uncovered the greatest conspiracy in history. As the dust settled on the global upheaval, Sarah Blackwood found herself in a position she never could have imagined. From a quiet life of spreadsheets and financial reports, She had become a reluctant hero, a symbol of truth and justice in a world hungry for both. The trials were a media sensation. Sarah watched from the witness stand as her former idol, Uncle Rob, was sentenced along with Marcus Holt, Agent Ryder, and dozens of other conspirators. The scope of the corruption was staggering, reaching into every corner of global power. But even as the old guard fell, Sarah knew the fight wasn't over. New power structures would rise, and with them, the potential for new corruption. The world needed watchdogs, now more than ever. That's why when the dust settled, Sarah made a decision that would change her life once again. "You're sure about this?" Elena asked, eyebrow raised as they stood outside a nondescript office building. Sarah nodded, a determined smile on her face. "Absolutely. The world needs this." Together, they pushed open the doors to their new venture, Blackwood & Kovach, independent financial investigators. Their mission, to use their unique skills to root out corruption wherever it might hide, to shine a light on the darkest corners of the financial world. As they settled into their new roles, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the danger, the betrayals, but also the courage, the friendship, and the unwavering commitment to the truth. She thought of the nameless, faceless people whose lives had been impacted by the conspiracy, the ones she'd fought for without even knowing it. And she thought of all those out there still fighting their own battles against injustice and corruption. One day, as they were wrapping up a particularly challenging case, Elena turned to Sarah with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "we should share our story, not just the big revelations, but the personal journey. It might inspire others to take a stand." Sarah hesitated. She'd always shied away from the spotlight. But Elena was right. Their story could make a difference. That night, Sarah sat down at her computer and began to write. The words flowed easily, recounting the twists and turns of their incredible journey. As she wrote, she realized that their story wasn't just about exposing a conspiracy. It was about the power of ordinary people to make extraordinary change. Months later, Sarah stood nervously backstage at a TED Talk, preparing to share her story with the world. As she waited for her cue, she thought about the message she wanted to convey. It wasn't just about the big, dramatic moments. It was about the small choices, the daily commitment to integrity and truth. It was about having the courage to question, to dig deeper, to stand up for what's right, even when it seems impossible. As she stepped onto the stage, facing a sea of expectant faces, Sarah took a deep breath. This was her chance to inspire others, to show them that one person can make a difference. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady. "My name is Sarah Blackwood, and I'm here to tell you a story. A story about numbers and lies and the biggest conspiracy the world has ever seen. But more than that, it's a story about truth and courage and the power we all have to change the world." As Sarah's voice filled the auditorium, captivating the audience with her tale, she felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. This was her new mission, not just to fight corruption, but to inspire others to join the fight. Because in the end, that's how real change happens. Not through one dramatic expose, but through countless small acts of courage and integrity. Through ordinary people choosing to do the right thing, day after day. As she concluded her talk, Sarah's voice rang out clear and strong. So I challenge each of you, look closer, ask questions, stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, because the world needs you, your courage, your integrity, your unique perspective. Together, we can build a world of true transparency and justice, a world where the truth always comes to light. The applause was thunderous, but Sarah barely heard it. Her mind was already on the work ahead, the next case, the next challenge. Because she knew now, this was more than a job, it was a calling. And as long as there were secrets to uncover and truths to be told, Sarah Blackwood would be there, armed with nothing more than a sharp mind, an unbreakable spirit, and a determination to make the world a little bit better, one spreadsheet at a time. As we conclude this thrilling journey with Sarah Blackwood, I hope her story has captivated and inspired you. If you've enjoyed this tale of courage, integrity, and the pursuit of truth, I urge you to take action. Subscribe to our channel to ensure you never miss another gripping narrative like Sarah's. By subscribing, you're not just following a story, You're joining a community of individuals who believe in the power of truth and the importance of standing up for what's right. But don't stop there. Share this video with your friends, family, and colleagues. Spread Sarah's message of courage and integrity, because every share is a step towards a more transparent, just world. Remember, change doesn't happen in isolation. It requires a chorus of voices, a community of like-minded individuals. By subscribing and sharing, you're adding your voice to that chorus. You're becoming part of something bigger than yourself. So don't wait. Hit that subscribe button now. Share this video far and wide. Join us in our mission to inspire, to reveal, to make a difference. Because who knows? The next Sarah Blackwood could be you. The next world-changing discovery could start with your curiosity, your courage, your commitment to the truth. Together, we can shine a light on the darkest corners of our world. Together, we can make a difference. Subscribe, share, and be part of the change. The world is waiting for your voice.